I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Andrew Schneider. I'm the Director of Operations for the Wyoming Arts Alliance. The Arts Alliance has been around for 40 years, coming up on 41 here, and our mission is really all about improving the climate for arts and culture in Wyoming. So to accomplish that, one of the things we do is we put together this series, the Online Arts and Culture series, and bring together experts and panelists from across the state, the nation, and I dare say the planet from time to time to talk about issues that affect the arts and culture here in Wyoming. Today's topic, as all of you well know, is really about how do you go from being a fiscally sponsored project that operates under someone else's 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt status to securing your own tax-exempt entity and status, and then becoming eligible for the kinds of grants that the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for Humanities, the Wyoming Arts Council makes available to support communities across Wyoming. So that's our purpose today. We're really fortunate to be joined by some experts in their field. We have Emily and Daniel Quintana, who will be speaking first from Opera Wyoming. We have Cashmere, Balland, and Amara Fehring from the Wyoming Arts Council, who, if you haven't had a chance to meet them, are two of the biggest boosters and supporters of the arts in our state. And we're also thrilled to be joined today by Jody Shields, who was just recently in the news for having spun off the Wyoming Nonprofit Network from the Align Group and is helming that up, and has been a tremendous supporter of the nonprofit sector and is really a fabulous resource for anyone in the arts and nonprofit space. So you're going to be hearing from all of those folks today. Just to give you a little run of show, we thought we'd start with a case study. And so we're going to have Opera Wyoming talk about their journey from being a fiscally sponsored project. And then we're going to get into the mechanics. And Jody's going to kind of guide us through what the steps are of incorporating and forming that entity. And then we'll turn it over to Cashmere and Amara to talk about the grant readiness component and all of the dotting the T's and crossing the I's. No, I have that backwards. Do that. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Emily and Daniel. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting us to share our story, Andrew, and for the Arts Alliance. Thank you very much. So we started in 2018, and we were fiscally sponsored by the Nicolaysian Art Museum. And we did that because we're artists and we don't know the business side of things, and we needed some guidance. And so one of our friends on the board had suggested the Nicolaysian Art Museum might be interested in fiscally sponsoring us. And after a couple of meetings, they just took us under their wing, and we had the space, which is always a problem in Casper, is finding the space in the venue to do something. And so we had our first season there at the Nicolaysian Art Museum inside the gallery, and we, surrounded by art. It was a great venue. And then I think it was just a couple of months after our first season, we were just kind of like, okay, I think it's safe. I think we can break away from this now. And we just took the steps from there, and we did great. And then COVID hit.
Yeah, we well, and we also we incorporated in February, and we wanted to apply for that grant cycle as well. And getting that 501c3 takes a lot of time and effort, and we wanted to get in. It was a really good thing that we started with the NIC, and them being so established, they had a lot of procedures in place for us. I think we actually did incorporate in 2020 or 2019, right before the pandemic. So I think that's when we got our 501c3. Yeah. So
and we're still kicking.
We made it. Yeah,
we made it. Yeah. So
basically, we got a really strong board together. Some people who had served on other boards, some people who could give us some guidance about where to go and how to write all of our articles and corporations and all of that stuff. I know that Jody's talking about that later, but that was the part for us that I guess was most difficult, was just getting everybody together and taking the time to write all of those and make sure they were aligned in the way that we wanted them. Also, after that first year, we knew that we actually could survive in Wyoming, so it was a good thing to have that first, so we could focus on the art that first year,
Mm-hmm.
and then move over
And have to take care of the fight, yeah,
and take care of the rest of the business side. So we had a good example of how to do that. We still follow a lot of the stuff that the Nick did in our own financials. So
yep. Maintaining the non-for-profit. We have been, I don't know how we do it sometimes, but really we have been living off the donations of the Wyoming Arts Council and a couple of private donors. And so if you have any like concerns about if you're going to be able to financially make it, I think we've just been blessed with doing good programming, and just providing the quality content. If you have that, if you have the right idea and the right vision, you should have no fear going from leaving your fiscal sponsorship to striking it out on your own. And if we weren't busy with our day jobs, we'd be doing a lot more.
Also having that strong board and having an understanding of the governance responsibilities of the board, which I think it gets lost in the art sometimes, is all of those other responsibilities, those legal responsibilities that we have as a nonprofit, and keeping track of all of those things and make sure we're meeting all of those. Having good volunteers and a good board and people that keep you on track, I think is key to making sure that we're moving forward and meeting our mission and doing all of the things that we need to do. And that governance piece is huge. So, yeah.
Well, it's been really cool to see you all, start with the kernel of idea, and as many artists do, coming from a place of passion, which is obviously required to fuel anything in the arts, but also required to fuel anything in the nonprofit caring sector, as I like to call it. And it's been really cool to see you all rise and to see the programming you did during COVID that was virtual, and the support that you received from the community and from the Arts Council to put all that together. So I really appreciate you all taking the time today just to talk about your journey a little bit, and give us a little grounding in the fact that it is possible here in Wyoming, and you've survived to tell the tale. So do any of our other panelists have questions for Emily and Daniel before we turn it over to Jody? Great. Well, folks, if you've got questions for Emily and Daniel, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We will try and reserve a little bit of time at the end of the hour here for questions and answers. So feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. And Jody, I will turn it over to you to enlighten us all.
Thank you, Andrew. Since I think almost all of you are fiscally sponsored, I'll just kind of go to the nuts and bolts, but just to reiterate that a nonprofit is a type of corporation. It's created to accomplish a public benefit. So there are no owners of a nonprofit. You could think of it as the community at large is the owner. Some organizations apply for a tax-exempt status from the IRS, so that's why we're talking about a 501c3 is one particular designation. There are other 501c somethings. C3 is specific to being set up for a public benefit or community benefit. And from a donor's perspective, if you have a 501c3 status, they can claim that as a charitable deduction on their taxes. Many grantors, foundations, government will require that 501c3 status as well. Some nonprofits are created at the state level and never go to that level because they are really tiny and don't need that. So that's sometimes where you see lots of registered at the state, but doesn't correlate with the numbers that the IRS has. So and I saw Elizabeth's on this call. Elizabeth Colvin really did a lot of work in creating our How to Start a Nonprofit in Wyoming publication that's on our website, wynonprofit.org. It's under the resources tab. And we're going to be updating it, but I know recently she did go through it and make sure all those hyperlinks are working. Can't say that it might have changed with some changes in Secretary of State. Some of those hyperlinks might be broken, but hopefully most of them are working. But I'll just go through some basics of getting started. Because you're fiscally sponsored, I assume then you have ongoing programs for organizations that are brand new, that don't have any programs. There's a whole list of things in that publication on, drafting your mission, creating a business plan, which is very important, determining, how you're going to operate, how you're going to sustain yourself financially. So there's lots of steps before you actually get to incorporating. Now, does everybody go through those steps? No, but they end up having to go back and, as I say, put their house in order, right? So it's really good to go through those steps so you set yourself up for success. If you probably already have a name you're using under your fiscal sponsorship, but you have to research before you incorporate in the state, and that's really in terms of becoming a 501c3. That's your first step, is to visit with the Secretary of State's website and to become incorporated in the state of Wyoming. And the first thing to do is research that name. What name can we use? Is our name we currently use, is that available? And the Secretary of State's website has lots of different links. Don't get too confused. I mean, they kind of link each other, and sometimes it's easy to get confused where you're at, but there's a spot, and I can share these links as well with Andrew, but they should be all in that publication. But you choose a company name. And you can do a search by business entity, by business name on the Secretary of State's website. And you want to make sure that it's not already chosen. So, be careful of common names. You don't want to steal somebody's name. In fact, it'll throw it back to you if you try to do that. But they have a choose a company name publication that gives you some good things to consider. And that link is on their site. On abbreviations and punctuations and things to consider. So first thing I would do if I were you is go to the Secretary of State's website, search for a business, type in the name you're using now and see what comes up, and go from there. So after you've chosen a name, you can reserve that name too. Say this is going to take us some time and you're worried that maybe somebody else is going to take that name, you can reserve it, I believe, for up to 120 days. And there's a spot that allows you to do that. Now, I assume maybe you have an advisory board or some board maybe you're working with right now under a fiscal sponsorship. But I really like to see the board being formed at this stage versus later. You can get away with incorporating the state without having your full board on, but I really think it's a good idea and best practice to have your board formed at this point. You do also have to determine a registered agent before you file with the Secretary of State. And a registered agent is somebody that first of all, you have to have a physical address. Let me find my registered agent information. It's just somebody that it's kind of like who's going to receive it. There's legal documents. Who's going to be the person to receive that? They're required to keep certain information about the organization, including the names and addresses of the board of directors, communication context, anything basic about the organization the registered agent needs to keep. Again, this has to be a physical address. So I know I've talked to one organization recently where they're forming and they're using a PO box, which is fine. But when you get to some steps like this, you actually need a physical address for the registered agent. So in some cases, like a founder, that's probably their home, unless you have an office already set up. So you just need to determine who's going to be the person responsible for receiving documents. They're the person that gets the notices on the annual filings for the Secretary of State. Let me see. Let me go to my next step here. You can incorporate online through the Secretary of State's website. There is an online process. There is also under forms, you can, if you kind of like me and want to see what are they going to all ask before I start through this online process, there is a paper form as well online that you can use to fill in before you do it online. But they're going to ask you for some basic information, you know, what is, who are the incorporators? That can be a single person, that could be, you know, I would use maybe if you have your board form, you know, who are the officers are usually typically the incorporators. You'll fill out, if you're one thing both online and paper, it'll ask you, is it a religious corporation, a public benefit, or a mutual? And this is once you get under that nonprofit incorporation. Keep in mind that organizations that are not intending to be a C3 are using this same form. For example, maybe it's an association of members for, I don't know, a club or something, and they're not going to end up being a C3. Maybe they're going to be a C6. They'll use this same form. So you want to make sure when you get to that point of religious, public benefit, or mutual, I think in most cases, all of you would be a public benefit. Religious would be, for instance, a church. Or a faith-based organization. Mutual benefit typically are those organizations that end up being a different kind of C. So that would be your chambers of commerce and economic development agencies. Those tend to be a mutual benefit. There are a few C3s that are mutual benefit, but I think it's just, you know, I think for all of your benefits, you're going to be a public benefit organization. So you'll put in the mailing address, your principal office address, the name and addresses of incorporators, the type of business that you're going to be conducting. That might, your mission statement, if you have it, might be a good, you know, place to include that if it's descriptive enough. And then your incorporator sign or put their information, and that's basically it. Your really with the online, you're incorporating, your articles and corporations are part of that online process. Do I think Wyoming makes it maybe even a little too strict? I wish they asked for a few more things, frankly. I think it would help organizations down the road, but they don't. It's pretty easy to incorporate in the state for the most part. Also, kind of at the same time, you need to apply for, if you don't already have an EIN, Employer's Identification Number, you will need that before you go to the IRS. And that can be done through the IRS website or that link that is in that Getting Started program or publication. And that's you use that number on lots of different things. Anytime you're opening accounts, grant applications, your SAMs, I know we'll talk about later, you need that EIN. So from there, let me see on the legal side. Oh, filing fees, it's $50 for nonprofits to file with the state. Again, a lot of these, the Secretary of State has a lot of this, has all of this information online. Let me see if I got you those. I talked about religious, public benefit, and mutual. There is a Wyoming Nonprofit Corporation Act. You'll find that link in several places. You certainly can read through that. Just keep in mind that that again is for all types of nonprofits. It's very what I would call membership heavy. So if you have if you're a member organization, it talks a lot about that. And it's really from a benefit perspective, what those benefits members get. If you do have membership as part of your structure, just be careful on that. It's kind of a signal for the IRS as well. If they see that member term used in your application or in your articles of incorporation, it can throw some questions as to whether you're actually a C3. So sometimes, arts organizations use like members of the symphony or members, and that may be just a way of supporting the organization. So you might want to get an attorney to take a look at that before you use the term members. Let's see. There's documentation there, how to become a registered agent. It's not anything too difficult. Just know if you're you have somebody that's already in the system as a registered agent, you need to make sure the address for that individual matches what you put in. That'll throw it out as well. Let's see. Again, there's a paper form for all of this you can do to kind of know what you're going to be asked on the online form. I had pulled out some information. What's the difference between, filing with the articles of incorporation or bylaws? And there's a lot of difference between these two things. Your articles of incorporation are to register a nonprofit as a corporation and comply with state and federal laws. Your bylaws outline more specific issues regarding your structure and your governance. I know Emily talked about how important governance is, and it is. So the bylaws are really your roadmap for the governance side. So the articles of incorporation include things you're including in that application, your full legal name, the statement of what your purpose is. One other thing to consider before you go through that is what are the disposition of assets if you're dissolved. It's not that the founders of the organizations can take those assets with them. They have to go to another nonprofit. So you need to keep it as open as possible. You could possibly say another arts organization in Wyoming that the board would then decide, or maybe you want to be a little bit more specific. I cautioned you to name another specific organization only because I've come into situations where they have something like that in their articles and they go to dissolve and an organization's name that's not even in existence anymore, or maybe circumstances have changed. So give yourself some leeway. It doesn't have to be a specific organization. It can be something as simple as with an organization in Wyoming with a like mission. Articles of organization are designed to be general and flexible. Ideally, you shouldn't need to amend them. So be, again, real careful on that purpose statement. Again, it's not a bad idea to get some professional advice on that. Just make sure the name of the organizations are the same in the articles and bylaws. And they should really, on the purpose again, be as general as possible, contain only the required by state law. Okay, I'll talk about bylaws more in a minute, but. So then you can, hopefully your board has had its first meeting, starting to work on these things. You can apply for tax exemption. There are two ways of doing this now. One way is go through the normal, typical what they call a 1023. And if you are an organization that is going to generally, and many of you have been functioning, so you could say, find out, what your receipts are on an annual basis. If you're $50,000 and over, or if you plan on being 50,000 or over, you would go through the typical 1023 application through the IRS website. It is lengthy, as was alluded to. There are lots of steps to doing it. Encourage folks to take a look of all the information needed before going through that process. There is another method. It's kind of like the IRS took the 1023 it's almost like writing a novel. And then they came up with the 1023 EZ streamlined. And it's like they went from a novel to a 1-paragraph blog. And I will tell you, the 1023 EZ is very easy. There are some problems with it from other standpoints, but if you are a very small organization, your annual receipts are always going to be 50,000 or less, or in the foreseeable future. The 1023 EZ is a streamlined application, and on it, it's only 3 pages. You'll need your board of directors and some other information, but there's not much more than that. The issue I have with it, and I caution if you do use it, is please make sure all these other things happened. We have some folks, it's pretty easy to incorporate in the state, and there's some folks that haven't been operating like you all have been, jump right in with the 1023 EZ, and then they go and think they're up for business, and they haven't done a lot of different things on the governance side, on the structure side, that they need to go back then and do. So that's the only thing I would question. I get it, it's a very attractive alternative for small organizations. I just caution that it's not a replacement for all the things that need to happen as part of forming a nonprofit. Let's see. Maintaining your entity. So each year you need to do an annual report, which is basically for the Secretary of State. You'll get a notice, email notice, hey, your annual report's due in the next, whatever, I think it's 30, 60 days. Then you basically fill in, are you still the primary registered agent, primary contact, who are your board members? It's a fairly easy online form. I think it's $25 or $35 each year. I can't recall. And then also annually, once you get your 501c3 status, depending on the size of your organization, if you're 50,000 or less in annual receipts, you will do the 990N, which is an online version of attesting, yes, we were 50,000 or less, and yes, I'm still the contact, and it's a pretty easy process. If you are larger, you would do a 990 EZ. I think it's 250,000 or less in receipts, or if you're larger than that, you would do the full 990. So it's an annual tax return. So if you're tiny, it's the 990N, next step 990 EZ, full 990. So I'll go back and look at this question. You need to make sure that's done. If you don't get that done, you can have your status revoked by the IRS. Do you have to rifle with the IRS if you start out as and then get bigger down the line? That's a really good question. I haven't seen anybody, doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I don't think the IRS is tracking them very well, frankly. The 990 EZ, which is, from my understanding, is a pretty automated approval process. And I don't know who's tracking. Oh, there's nothing on the IRS sites. If you look at search a nonprofit, there's nothing on there that says this organization completed the 1023 versus 1023 EZ. So I don't think the IRS is tracking this very well. To be honest, I will tell you, from the compliance side, the National Council of Nonprofits, of which we are a member, has lobbied to try to get the IRS to require more on that 1023 EZ. And also the state regulators have as well. And it's not for organizations like you. at all, but it's really primary to really stop the few bad apples that see it as an opportunity to take advantage, right? And set up bogus organizations, which I know none of you are that, but that's why we've kind of come against it. But there's frankly, I don't think anybody's tracking that. I think it says if in 3 years you don't, either you haven't received in the past 3 years or are looking for not receiving more than 50,000, you can do the 1023 easy. Okay. So I'm looking to see what else. In terms of how am I on time, Andrew? Am I getting there?
Yeah, no, you're doing great. I think we've got
Okay.
another couple minutes, and then
Okay.
that'll give Amara and Cashmere plenty of time.
All right. Just things I noted down. Wyoming Nonprofit Corporation Act. You have to have a minimum of 3 board members. You could certainly have more, and I would suggest more, but don't get it huge. I think average, I see about 6 to 12 being the average of the number of board members, especially if you're an operating, which I think many of you are. It's a working board, so it's nice to have enough people to do the work of the organization. In terms of policies, your fiscal agent, as the previous speakers alluded to, that they can provide a lot of resources for you. I encourage you to look at what are their financial policies, how can we adapt these to our organization. I always look at policies, what are our greatest risk areas? Start with that. So risk areas in money, so financial policies, risk areas in if you have liabilities in your space, and I'm thinking in-person type things, you want to make sure you have policies related to liability and insurance and how you're going to protect the assets of the organization. Other considerations, the Wyoming Nonprofit Network is a resource. Again, that publication is available to you. Elizabeth did a great job and it's very thorough. We are providing, working on more resources at the kind of one-on-one level on our website. We're not there yet, but you will find some of them there. We also do board fundamentals, and we're going to have kind of a component of nonprofit fundamentals, the training, and we'll be doing that regionally in 2024. So I encourage you to watch our website as those dates can become available. That's a good thing to send your board to and for you to attend as well. We also, I know Andrew had my list here, WYO Gives, which is our annual day of giving. Online giving is in July. And the one thing I just want to make sure people understand, we have had a match and we haven't had confirmation on a site-wide match or a fairly extensive match. It's not every organization is matched, but that's typically what people hear about as our $1 million match. Please know that from the Hughes Charitable Foundation match, to qualify that, you have to be a C3 for at least 2 years. So I want to make that known so that you have complete understanding of that. And in addition, that match has been $1 to $1 up to when that match runs out, and a maximum for organizations. We are reviewing that, and we will likely, if the Hughes Foundation will be doing it again, we will likely go to a kind of a weighted match, so it will look different. So I encourage you to visit the WY Nonprofit website. If you're in the process of forming a nonprofit, you can join if you're in that process, and then once you have your C3, let us know. That's one good way of making sure you're getting all the emails. Otherwise, if you're not ready to join, you can, if you're not already in our contact list, you can shoot me an email and I'll put my, or actually I'm going to put Elizabeth's email in here to add you to our database so that you'll be aware of, hey, when is the trainings coming up, when is WYO Gives registration opening, and all of that information. I know there's a lot there, and I just kind of threw it out, but We're happy to, yeah, give the publication, answer some questions, get us unstuck. We are not attorneys, and so and we won't like do the process for you, but we will tell you what we know and also refer you to professional advisors when needed.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, like we all know, those of us who have done it, that it is a substantial amount of work, and that's why it's a great to start with a fiscal sponsor and make that transition and have plenty of time to do it. But it is possible, and this resource that you've shared, I dropped the link in the chat so folks can find that there, and makes it as easy as possible. And I appreciate you, Jody, letting folks know how they can join the Wyoming Nonprofit Network and how they can access all of those additional training resources. And great advice on finding an entity attorney who can help you through through some of those. Before I kick it over to Cashmere and Amara, Deborah had a question about the liabilities of board members, and what are the liabilities of board members? And I wondered if you wanted to take a crack at that.
Sure. Really, the board is ultimately responsible for the organization. Now, there are some protections, you know, as a volunteer board in state statute or as volunteers, but it doesn't mean you still can't be sued, and it doesn't mean you still don't have, like, you know, litigation expenses. I, you know, advise every nonprofit and board members, the organization really needs directors and officers insurance to protect them and also cover any expenses. So D&O insurance is kind of the short-term name. Some board members won't even get on a board without the organization having it. It's just, it gives you some protection. And then the other one, and especially as an event-related organization, is some general liability is a good idea as well. Did that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. Thank you, Jody. All right, we'll kick it over to Cashmere and Amara.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Well, I'm going to kick us off, and then I'll toss it over to Cashmere. So my name is Amara Fehring, and I am the Community Development and Arts Learning Specialist for the Wyoming Arts Council. And in this role, I manage the Community Support Grant, which is the grant that most organizations apply for. So this grant is awesome because it includes 3 different things. So you can apply for operation support, project support, and arts learning support. So there's 3 different sections in there, which is really helpful. We are so grateful that we can offer operation support. So that includes things like your rent and utilities and all that good stuff to keep your lights on so you can keep doing the arts programming that we so desperately need in this state. And then programs. Obviously, any program is welcome as long as it's arts-based. And then arts learning support is awesome because we do have a lot of organizations that offer arts education and workshops and classes. And so we love that we can offer those 3 sections. So this grant for this next fiscal year will open February 19th. That's when you can log into Found It, and Cashmere will tell you all about Found It and the UEI and all that good stuff. But February 19th is when the application opens for you to be able to apply for CSG, and then it will close March 29th. So you have a little bit over a month to work your way through our application. Cashmere and I are both available to help you at any point in time, answer your questions. We can give you feedback, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, if anybody has any questions about, you know, what your grant entails, kind of the content of your grant, that's me. So feel free to reach out if you have questions about, like, hey, does this project make sense to apply for this grant? What does our, you know, does our arts ed make sense? So content is me, and Cashmere will handle all of your wonderful logistics. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But on that note, we'll toss it over to Cashmere to kind of talk about what you need to do to, you know, get into Found It and apply.
Thanks, Amara. So yeah, I'm Cashmere Balland. I'm the Grants and Administration Manager. A lot of you have probably emailed me or talked to me on the phone or maybe met me in person. So there are just some other grants we do have available. I just wanted to kind of highlight real quickly. We have the Professional Development Grant and the Arts Access Project Grant. You know, if you don't get a community support grant, you can apply for those alternatively, just as a heads up. And then the big thing that I think people run into when they apply for our grants is the UEI. It's a new alphanumeric code that was, code that was developed in April 2022. It took over the DUNS number, if you're familiar with that at all. It has gotten a lot better. You apply for it for free at sam.gov. It has, like I said, it has improved a lot, but there are still some entities that run into issues when they're validating things like Jody had mentioned having a physical address. That is huge when you're doing your sam.gov. That's where a lot of people get hung up. You know, if you don't have a physical office space and you have a PO box, they don't usually accept that. So alternatively, they've said, you know, just wherever you keep your books at is the address you want to use. So maybe that's your registered agent who has that. So you can use their physical address. It's as your address in sam.gov, just as a helpful little tip that we've run into a lot. I'm always welcome to help you figure that out in sam.gov. It is a federal site, so I can't necessarily always see behind the scenes stuff, but feel free to send me screenshots. That's really helped. They do have some really useful step-by-step webinars that they've released. We do have all of those on our website, on the very first dashboard of our website that you get to. We have some helpful videos that Amara and I have put together also about doing the application process, like actually in Fountain itself. The online grant system that we use that I'm sure most of you are already familiar with. But in case you haven't done it before, we do have that on there. We also have filling out your final report, just because we know sometimes those pesky budget questions can be a little cumbersome. So, and always, if you're still not sure after watching those videos or you just don't have the time to watch those, feel free to call or email Amara and I. We're always welcome to help you out, figure things out. So I think that's pretty much it. And then the other thing too that you might not necessarily know as if you're using a fiscal sponsor, but I'm sure you've seen it in the application, is just making sure you are up to date with your Secretary of State filings, just because you do have to be in good standing with them for our contracts that we do with the Attorney General's office. So just another little tip, I guess. I think, unless I'm forgetting something, Amara, I'm not sure, or Andrew, if you had any other things you thought I should probably hit on.
Yeah, I wanted.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. I was just going to reiterate that this year we are not able to accept fiscal sponsors for the community support grant. So, you know, this is one of the reasons why we're doing this, is to help you get the status that you need to be able to apply for the community support grant. So just as a side note there.
Thanks, Amara.
Yeah.
Cashmere, I wanted to ask about the when you're getting your unique entity identifier, that you go directly to sam.gov.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep. sam.gov. Make sure you avoid, there are some scam sites out there. So definitely make sure we can drop that in the chat. We also have links to it on our website also. But always make sure that you're applying through there. You shouldn't have to pay anything to do it. There are some other things in there that you'll probably notice once you actually get into the website of sam.gov. It will ask you, you know, if you're applying for full registration or if you just need a UEI. If you're only applying for grants like ours, within the Wyoming Arts Council, or even, you know, the Cultural Trust Fund, things like that, you only need the UEI. If you do a full registration, there's no harm in doing it. It's just a little bit more work on your end. It's just something that you would need if you apply directly to, say, the NEA. Those are, if you're applying directly for the federal government grants that you'll want to do. So, you know, depending on what you have planned or what you have going on. It might be worth doing the full registration to start with, but for us, you really only need the UEI. And they do have, like I said, they do have some really good information on their website also about explaining that a little bit better, if I didn't do a very good job of that. So, or if you have questions, like I said, feel free to ask me. I live in the world of UEIs a lot.
Awesome. That is exactly what I wanted to flag for people, is that it shouldn't cost you money to get that. And there are numerous entities that will try to take your money to help you with that process. But so don't be scammed out of your valuable nonprofit resources. Well, we've got just about 7 minutes before the end of our scheduled time. And so I just wanted to once again thank all of our panelists for joining us today, especially Jody for your work at the nonprofit network and the resources that you make available to help nonprofits every day, to our partners at the Arts Council who helped make this series possible and who helped do frankly, an incredible amount of support for arts in every single county, all corners of the state. And then to Daniel and Emily for joining us today, taking a break out from your grueling holiday performing, rehearsing schedule to be with us. And if anyone has questions, now is a great time to ask them. We'll hang around for a couple more minutes. And if not, I hope you enjoy your day. Hope you have great holidays and the remainder of Native American Heritage Month. And stay tuned to our website, wyomingarts.org. You can join our mailing list there and find out about other online arts and culture series and other resources that the Alliance makes available throughout the year. Any last questions before we shuffle off here, or any last thoughts from our panelists?
I just want to thank Andrew for doing all this work on this too. It's been very helpful in organizing and logistics, and I appreciate it a lot.
Well, it's my pleasure. And let's get together and do it again soon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to drop my email in the chat here. If you have any feedback or any follow-up questions on this session, or you have any challenges finding our email list, please feel free to reach out to me directly anytime, and I will help connect you to the info that you're looking for. And Jody put her email or email for the network in there as well, so you can feel free to use that. As Cashmere and Amara mentioned, they're accessible through the Arts Council's website, which you can get to simply through wyomingartscouncil.org. And if you're in range and you see Opera Wyoming show up on a marquee near you, I highly recommend checking out what they do and the enrichment they bring to Wyoming. So with that, I will sign us off. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thanks again.